Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abi.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Hey, Connected Life fam.
You think if you change one word, that it's different.
I don't mind. It's my calling card. I was thinking the other day about working in high school, and when I was younger and I was working,
Having a job in high school.
Yeah, having a job. Well, I was working for my dad, and there was this guy who worked with us, and he had like a very much attitude of like, I don't know why I'd never move ahead in life and stuff like that. And later on, we found out, well, a couple things. Number one, on Friday when he got paid, he gambled all of his money away on Fridays. So his money was gone right off the bat on that. And then later on, we found out due to a giant fire on one of his properties that he had, that he was making meth. So he'd get off work and he'd go make meth. And so he was making and selling meth. And he also was gambling away all of his money. And he was always very confused at why his life wasn't moving forward. Like you'd hear conversation. I always had to giggle.
Well, yeah, because he's making meth. He's like, why am I not rich yet? I'd be confused too.
Thing was, he was a brilliant mind. Like he could do anything. I mean, if you could figure out how to make meth, and apparently it was good meth.
Apparently.
but there was something to this thing of I'm like, we always would have this conversation about like, he is brilliant. And if he did certain things, like he could actually really see success over his life.
Take over the world.
Yeah. And there was certain elements to his life where there was actions that he did that were both moving towards the potential for success.
Yeah.
But then actions he wasn't taking that were moving against him, that were working against him. Then there was emotional aspects that could work for him because there was certain heart postures that he had that when he applied it in a certain area, like when he did electrical, he was a badass and he accomplished so much when he did it, right? But then there was other emotional aspects that when he approached stuff, it tore everything down. Everything fell apart for him. And so he was in this cycle of like being right on the edge of being able to move his entire life forward all the time, but never actually couldn't identify it.
Right.
Right. And so it was clear to everyone else but him.
Yes.
He'd be like, this is unfair. Why is my life like this? And everyone would be like, oh my God, like it's very clear. Stop making math. but stop lying all the time. But that's something that I get a lot of people asking me. They're like, I don't know, like how do you become successful? And there's different levels of what success is, right?
Yes.
Of how we define success. But I think one of the things that a lot of people are addressing with me when they talk about success is the fulfillment of life, finding a fulfillment in creating the dreams that they want to create, having good heart experiences where there's a sense of abundance and vibrancy, where they feel like their life is moving forward.
Right.
Right. And so a conversation that we want to have today is based around that. Like we want to do a 2-part conversation. One, we want to have a conversation around actions and one around the emotional state of being, and to kind of give an overarching idea of like, hey, if I implement these things from an action place and an emotional heart place, I can have a successful life. And that successful life being defined as moving the needle towards
fulfillment,
a sense of fulfillment, seeing
purpose.
Seeing dreams come into fruition,
not being stuck in life. Yeah,
having good relationships, stuff like that, so that there's always some form of momentum, development, growth, movement forward.
Because humans actually need that. We need to feel like our lives are moving forward in some way. Yeah. And we need to feel like they're like we're not stuck. I think feeling trapped and stuck is like a form of hell on earth, you know?
Yes.
Of like feeling like I can't get where I'm trying to go. And I know, so I have had several positions of leadership where I've been over lots of people.
Yeah.
And It is a fascinating thing to me because you'll see people who are so hungry, like they want to grow. They want to take over more. They want more leadership. They want more whatever. And you'll watch some of them and you'll just be like, that is the most unique strategy you have to think that you're going to gain leadership and influence. You know, like there's a lot of things you can do to shoot yourself in the foot. And I think there's a lot of things that people don't realize if they want growth and momentum. There's a few things that universally people are just drawn to promote, empower, and believe in when you operate out of certain things.
Absolutely. And I remember there was a time, and I think that probably a lot of people can identify with this thought process. There's this idea of you either don't have it or you do have it. And it's like 100%. Those people over there, they just have something magical on their lives, and
they get all the favor and they're stupid and I'm as great as them. Why is that happening?
Or there's this thought of like, oh, they have something natural. It just comes natural to them, certain aspects of behavior and stuff. And here's the one lie that I believed is that there's just an innate natural of like, this is who I am. This is just how things are. Like everything is subject to being changed at some level. Yeah. It may not be able to be as great as someone else because like our best that we're giving at like developing something inside of ourselves might not be able to match something else. Who knows? But there is an ability to rewire and retrain the way that we do life. It does take effort and intentionality, but it's available to anybody. Yeah. So with that said, I want to jump into
the whole goal of this conversation is to empower people because if you don't know what you don't know. And so if you can, the goal is not that you leave this conversation and you're like, I have to change everything about my life. I have to do everything different. The goal is that you just find a couple things that you can feel proud of yourself for. Like, yeah, I am doing that. And a couple things that you can feel like, oh, I want to grow in that.
Yeah. And I think
and getting rid of shame, because a lot of times we listen to things and we feel so much shame. Oh, I'm failing at life. See, this shows all the things that I'm bad at. This shows all the reasons I'll never be successful. And this is a conversation to empower, like, no, actually, when you know the steps you can take, even if it takes you a while, like a lot of my belief is like, let's say that one of them is, what are we talking about? Action steps right now. Let's say, what's one of the action steps?
Ownership.
So let's say that you're not good at ownership.
At taking ownership.
Yeah. And you don't have to feel like bad about that. You can be like, this isn't something I learned. I wasn't taught this. It's going to take me a while to learn how to implement this. So I'm going to learn how to take a few steps towards that. I remember my dental hygienist once. Hygienist. Tomato. So she said, like, with flossing, she's like, instead of being like, you have to floss every day, which I can floss now much better than I used to. But I used to have, like, you just avoid the things that you feel like you're never going to be able to do. And she's like, don't try to do it every day. Because as soon as you miss a day or you miss a couple days, you feel defeated and just stop.
Just think about flossing in the back of your head.
No, she said, just try to floss more than you are now.
Yeah.
And think every time you floss that it's a little bit more now, which was accurate because when she told me this, I was much younger and I didn't floss at all. So it was literally like, yeah, if I floss once a month, I'm winning. If I floss once a week, I'm really winning. And so then it became that I was just celebrating every time I did a new behavior instead of looking at how far I needed to go to get to that new behavior. I was like, no, I'm doing great.
Yeah. And I think what Abby's doing is she's wanting to set you up for success for how you approach a conversation like this inside of your heart. I'm going to add something to it that I think is a great thought because it came from me. So I had this conversation with our students over in LCMC the other day as we're tackling a new topic. And one of the conversations I had is that oftentimes when it comes to pursuing, say, a new truth inside of our lives, it's very easy for us to make an identity statement out of it. Like, I'm so bad, I'm failing, what's wrong with me? Instead of like, when we find out that there's something that we're not doing that we could do differently, we need to approach it with a matter of fact attitude. Yeah. Like, oh, I just didn't have that information before. Now I have it now. And an example I used is this idea of, okay, you're driving your car, all of a sudden it starts smoking and the engine completely stops and you're on the side of the road. And someone comes to you and they're trying to help you with it. They're under the hood and they go, oh, you don't have any oil in your engine. Like, the oil like has never been changed. It's dripped all the way out. Like, there's just nothing there. You need oil in order for this to run, and you need to consistently put oil in it. You can either take that as a value assessment and be like, what's wrong with me? I'm an idiot. I should know better. I need to figure these things out better. You can go, oh, that's information that I didn't have before. Right. Now it's new information. And now I'm going to go on the journey of learning how to maintain the oil in my car. It's that simple.
It's almost a bad analogy for me, though, because my dad drilled into me so many times how bad it would be if I ever let the oil go out. So I'm going to imagine that it's more like there's like an electrical thing that you're supposed to do that I just didn't know about.
Yeah, there you go. But for all that to say, these types of conversations can raise our anxiety if we're in a posture of performance and assigning an identity statement over it, or they can actually just lower our anxiety. Like, oh, that's so cool.
That's new.
I have some new information. There's an area over there that, not that I have to tackle, but there's an invitation to slowly learn more about that specific aspect so that I could implement it in my life, because I don't need to change it by tomorrow. And I'm not going to be able to change it by tomorrow. Yeah. So it's a fresh revealing to me that I get to contemplate on.
Yes. Also, my dad was great and very helpful with cars. I'm just saying, he was always telling me about the oil.
Well, yeah.
Back in the day, you had to check the oil. Do you know that's not a thing anymore? Like, cars just tell you.
Like, hey.
They say you need oil.
Totally.
But back in the day, every time we took a road trip, we had to check the oil.
Well, so you had a crappy car.
I had a car that also... leaked oil, so you really had to check the oil.
If I was your dad and the way that your dyslexia is and stuff, I'd be like, you're going to blow your car up if you don't check the oil every day.
I actually honestly could have, because it did leak a lot of oil.
Yeah. Okay. With that said, we already kind of revealed one action step in a conversation around ownership. Ownership is something that people are like very apprehensive of taking inside of their life. A lot of times ownership is avoided at all costs because of the feeling of shame and blame. So we were just talking about blame a second ago, which is that identity statement. Like, we blame ourselves. We make it about blame and like, I'm bad and this is all my fault. Instead of just being like, ownership is a place where we come to a conclusion, shame-free, blame-free, and we just go, oh, I know I made a mess, or I know that something's not working here, or I know that this could be done differently. And I know that my life is where it is, and it's because of the way that I believe or the way that I've participated, and I can change that. Yeah.
Yep. Ownership is a tricky one. I have found ownership sometimes feels like you're
stabbing yourself in the eyeball.
It honestly does. Me and Pete talk about this. This is all the time. We're like, oh, I have to just eat my crap again. Like, that's how it feels. I was trying to think of a more positive analogy, but it kind of feels that way. Like, you're just having to face the thing about you that is messy. I would say it's been beautiful and terrible on a regular basis to start understanding who we are and have to take ownership for it. Like, oh, actually, I haven't managed my emotions well in this area. Oh, actually, I've gotten really short in this area. Oh, actually, I've affected people by doing like, ownership is like kind of owning who you are and how you impact the world.
Yeah, it's an well, there's different types of ownership. One type of it is the acknowledgement of how I've participated and how it has impacted, like you said, the world around me. Another level of ownership also on that note is like for instance, this marriage,
Mm-hmm.
I have taken ownership over this marriage. It means I am looking at my marriage and saying, this is my marriage. It's not someone else's marriage. Someone else isn't going to fix this marriage.
Yes.
Someone else isn't going to show up and help us connect better.
Yeah.
This is about me. I need to own that this is my marriage. The problems that I have inside of it are due in part to me. The victories that I have inside of it are due in part to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an aspect of ownership that is very empowering, because it's scary though, especially if you see a dumpster fire of a marriage, right? And you're like, oh, it's a dumpster fire of a marriage. I want to blame Abby. No. I need to own the marriage itself, that this is my marriage, and I need to own my part inside of it, because when I do that, I can put out a dumpster fire.
Well, and it's not owning the whole thing. It's owning your part. I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah.
Like you can be, most trigger cycles, both people are in their own trigger cycle with each other. We should do a podcast on trigger cycles and what that's like.
That'd be great.
Because you just kind of can get to where you're circling, like what they do triggers
As
you.
Barry calls the bad dance.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so inside of it, that feels really scary oftentimes, because if we take ownership for something, again, that can mean that we're bad, or we're the only problem inside of something.
That's people's wrong view of ownership.
I think about this inside of businesses. Like there can be a bigger problem with a company, a company-wide problem of how people are showing up. And then there's the individual ownership of like, this is my job. I come here every day, and here's the ways that I am not healthily co-creating inside of this. And I am furthering bad, ugly narratives inside of this space.
Right.
And a lot of people, again, don't want to do that because they want to play the part of being the victim. They don't want to have to feel shame. They want to feel justified in their actions. They don't want to have to look honestly at their shortcomings and their failures.
Well, so I'll give a contrast of when you don't have ownership.
Yeah.
It'd be like you show up to your job and you're like, the job is just toxic culture. So I'm just going to shut down or do whatever to survive, or blame my environment for why I'm unhappy.
Yeah.
So ownership would look like I always have power to make my world a little bit better.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like, I think so much ownership. I go back to Viktor Frankl, in The Search for Significance. He was in the Nazi concentration camps, and he was saying that even when they stripped so many choices away, you still had the power of choice. You still, like, you're starving, you still have the power to give your bread to somebody that needs it. You still have the power to have hope. They can't take that.
You have the power to forgive.
You have the power to forgive. Yeah. So what he was doing was fine. And actually there's several psychologists that came out of the concentration camps who all had a theme very similar to this. The people who felt like they had power to affect their lives, it did create a sense of hope for them, and which helped survive, to have a sense of hope and purpose. And so most of us can get into the trap of feeling powerless and like we're victims. And so we can just start talking about all the things we don't have power over. Yeah. I did this the other day. My friend was complaining about something, and I brought up a thing that I was concerned about. And then now we're just going back and forth about all the things that were powerless. And I could start to feel myself sinking. And I was like, oh God, it just feels horrible. And like everything's doomed. And like, we're never going to, like, it's never going to be okay. And so I was like, hey, can we stop this conversation a little bit and just turn it a little bit? And it wasn't even like, can we turn it to what we have power over? It was just like, can we not talk about all the ways that we're powerless to something?
Yeah.
And I did that to manage my own heart, because I don't like going into that place that says I have no ability to affect change.
Yes. And
so a lot of it, even if it is, I'm going to be the change. Like maybe you are in a really negative culture and you decide that you're going to be really positive. I had one of my clients, one of the things I challenged her to do, she was feeling just really disconnected at her work and felt like nobody cared about each other. And I was like, well, what is one thing you could do to change that environment? And so she decided to get notes and write like just notes to people about things she valued about them or appreciated about them or liked about them, and just regularly. So once a week she'd write a note to somebody. And she started to see people soften and engage and connect with her. And I always think that there are so many more options. This is like being ownership, like having ownership is also looking for what are the options I have, the little options I have to influence something.
Yeah. I remember, and I've told this story before, but when I worked on the set of Overhaulin' out in LA, there were 3 female producers that were kind of running the ship, and that the rest of the, everyone working on the show was male except for one other female. And so I know that those 3 women feel very threatened inside of that space. And so they were known as the 3 bitches. And that's what they were communicated about. And from the day I got on the first day I got on the job, I went and I sent them all flowers. I like spent what I would probably make, the whole week. Yeah, the whole week on flowers for them, and signed it anonymous. Mm-hmm. And I was like, everyone is making an agreement over that emotional space that they're inside of, and against them, and they're at war with them, and I'm not going to. And so every day I would come in with the pleasant smile, and I would say hi to each of them. And I know at first they're like, he's just such an ass kisser, and they were annoyed by it. Yeah. But I was like, no, I'm choosing to love these 3 individuals. And it came to a point where people did not want me to take days off on set because
they were nicer.
They were completely nicer and more happy when I was on set. It was noticeable by many people on the crew. Mm-hmm. And it was because I was taking ownership over the space. I was like, no, this is my work environment, and I'm not going to be powerless to this. They may continue to that behavior, but I'm going to show up with a heart and mindset. Even the fact that one of them, I fasted for an entire week and prayed all week long when I had the week off, and over that person, and they had a radical life change. They came to me and were like, have you been throwing some of that good energy my direction? And they like teared up, and I was like, yeah, maybe. I was fasting and praying for you all week. And she's just crying, and she's just like, something changed in my heart, like over this week. And I don't know what it is. And I'm going back to church. Right. And there was something about my direct involvement with my life. I was not being passive. I was being engaged and taking ownership over the environment. And so even if they didn't change, I knew that I wasn't going to be a victim of their anger, their frustration, their dissatisfaction. I was going to be an anchor of hope and joy and peace.
I think it's really important to have friends that you kind of talk through this stuff with, because it's easy to, it's almost like complacency is like a river that you can just get in and start to float down. You can just it's easy to just start to believe the mainstream culture is how it is, and there's nothing you can do to transform things, and that you're powerless to something. It's easy to believe, like, if your spouse and you disagree on money, well, then I'm just not going to care about our finances. Like, it's easy to just go into defeat instead of finding, like, sometimes people hit their head against a wall and they're like, well, it's not changing anything. I'm like, well, maybe try a different path.
Yes.
Like, yeah, maybe yelling at your spouse every day about how your finances isn't working.
Right.
Or maybe, like, here would be a good example, like, oh, they're not looking at their finances. I'm going to try, what if we try once a day to look at them together? What if we try once a week? What if we go get ice cream while we look at our finances? What if we, like, solutions, or like try different options? But the reason I'm saying this is when I have friends who have this mentality, and we've talked about this, when I start to get into that, like, nah, it's just how it is, and I don't know what to do, they can remind me. And I think one of the things I love about prayer is there's a level of ownership you can have with prayer, which is like, no, I'm going to declare good things over this person, or I'm going to, one of the things I did with ownership, there was this woman that I had at a job, and everybody felt, she didn't have a great reputation, but she was in charge of a lot. And so I remember every time she came walking towards me, I would feel the emotions in my body of like, here she comes. And so I was like, what do I have the power over? I have the power over my internal world. Even if it doesn't transform her, I have the power over how do I feel on the inside when I see her. So I started, there's this, we've talked about it before, E. Halulakula Hulin, who created this system in his head or heart. He would work through, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. Like these are just 4 statements that every human needs for
talking
every
about Hawaiian
situation.
Ho'oponopono.
Yeah. So I started doing that. Every time she'd walk towards me, I'd be like, I'm sorry. And I'd think about she must have her walls up because people have really hurt her. Thank you. Oh, she must not feel appreciated. I'm going to just in my emotions send out gratitude for the things she's doing that no one sees. Cause I think those are all things we can relate to. Mm-hmm. Please forgive me. I bet there's people who have wronged her and betrayed her that she doesn't. I love you. She probably needs to feel loved. And I would just go through those things. And then I would be like, I welcome you. I'm glad you're coming in. And then when she got to me, cause there's a long hallway up to where I was at, I would be like, hi, it's good to see you. And that was it. It wasn't like this huge thing, but she really softened and opened towards me. Mm-hmm. And it's that idea of if I decide that I have power, this ownership is like, I can drive my car. I can make decisions that can influence my life. And this is one of the biggest foundations for success is that there are always choices you can make that can make your life better.
Yeah.
When we get stuck in hopelessness or repeating cycles, it's because we've decided this is just how it is.
And part of what we're talking about in this, which leads to another point, is proactivity, because mixed in with ownership is proactive decision making, where it's like, I proactively, in taking ownership over the space, say at Overhauling, I proactively was like, today I'm going to get up and make decisions. I'm going to think of ways to love on these 3 women inside of this space. I'm going to think of ways to support them and conversations to have with them. And there's so much inside of our lives that it's very easy for us to live passive.
Yes.
Passive in our relationships, just hoping that they work out, hoping that they get better, passive in our job places, hoping that things move forward, hoping we get a promotion or something like that. Versus proactivity is like, what is the deliberate? Abby's talking about a deliberate sense of affecting my life and the environment around me. And we have to sometimes overcome a lot of hopelessness, because a lot of times our passivity is rooted in this hopelessness. Learned powerlessness.
Yes.
It says maybe we have pain in our childhood where it's like, no matter how good I am, I'm still going to get in trouble.
Totally.
So what's the point? Monster comes into our life.
No matter how much I clean, my dad's still going to find a fingerprint. No matter how much I do, like whatever the thing is from their childhood.
Totally. And that's something that I had a lot in my life. So it's very easy for me to vacillate between proactivity and passivity, depending on what the circumstance was.
Yeah.
Some circumstances I knew that if I just kick ass over here, it will produce something really well for me. But if no matter what I do over in this area of stuff, it's not going to make any impact, so it's pointless. And so that's something that we have to determine. What are our trigger points inside of our hearts as you're thinking about the idea of being passive versus proactive, right? Yeah. So it may be that there's some areas that are you're really proactive in, but others that you're just like, there's no hope inside of that. And that's where I had to go, why am I hopeless here? What's the lie that I'm believing that keeps me in passivity on this thing? The lie is that I cannot make an impact emotionally and relationally in these ways based on my childhood stuff. All right, what do I need to do? And part of my proactive engagement was proactively looking at my passivity.
Yes.
And even if it starts there, if the only thing that you can proactively do is deliberately try to look at why you're operating the way that you are, then that's a phenomenal start to all of it. That's a great way to start being proactive.
Yes. I was thinking about a couple of friends who are proactive, like one of them in their finances. They're like, okay, we're the CEOs. Me and my wife are the CEOs of our business, our family business. So once a week, we're going to have a business meeting where we go over our finances and our goals for our future, and it was just a proactive step and we just did the money series with Ruth, and the proactive, I'm going to look at my finances. Like there's a million different ways. And I always look at, find something that you can chew. Don't try to become proactive in the biggest way possible.
Yeah.
Find something that you can chew. Like if you're like, I want to start working out, that would be proactive. It's taking ownership of my life. I'm tired of feeling tired. I want to work out.
Right. Even a proactive step is I'm going to just look for different gyms in the area to sign up for a membership. That's such a small step of proactivity, right? It doesn't have to be like, okay, now I'm working out 2 hours a day, every day or whatever. It's the steps.
Or like a lot of people will be like, I'm going to start by walking for 10 minutes every day.
Yes.
And then I'm going to walk for 20 minutes every day. And then I'm going to walk for 30 minutes every day.
Building endurance, life endurance, right?
Yes. And I'm going to get a friend who does it with me so that we have find a little thing that feels doable. Like change happens in doable chunks.
Yeah.
And so, but the goal is being proactive. The things that you are proactive in, you will see growth.
Yeah. It's interesting because
it's kind of like a plant. If you choose to water it, it will probably help it grow better.
Yeah. I was working with some clients where they had incredibly enormous caverns of passivity inside of their lives. They're business guys. And there was just like, you're so passive over here, guys. And I challenged them. It was a weekly conversation. Hey, you're being passive. And proactivity looked like deliberately starting to have conversations with their wives, beginning to have conversations that were hard with their employees. Yep. And I watched them go from incredible amounts of passivity to these badass bosses who have weathered the storms of major business transition, firings, layoffs they had to do, regrowing their business, and coming to a point of like we've gone through these celebration moments of, you guys are so proactive.
Totally.
You're so deliberately facing stuff. You don't run from things anymore. And I'm like, how do you feel? And they're like, I feel successful.
Yeah.
Like there's that sense of, I feel so successful.
I feel proud. There's a pride that you feel.
Very healthy pride.
When you do proactive things, it really does affect you.
Yeah. So what's the next one?
Okay. I think pursuit of others.
Yes.
We'll go into that from proactive because this is one of those skills that a lot of people don't learn. How to pursue others, how to engage others, how to reach out for help, how to reach out to have fun with somebody, how to reach out to a friend.
Yeah. So your life feels really empty, right? You feel really alone. You feel really abandoned. You feel very unfulfilled.
Yeah.
And proactively reaching out to others feels terrifying, right?
Yeah.
Because there's the potential for rejection. There's potential for pain inside of relationships. There's a potential for misunderstandings and all that. So there is a lot that we have to face.
Yeah.
But when you build a community by pursuing others, you're both sowing love into others and creating opportunities to be loved and to be championed and to feel like you can face the world around you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about just intentionally engaging. Like it can be little ways to pursue others. It can be, and obviously don't pursue people who don't ever respond back.
Yeah.
But there is the point of I know so many people that don't have friends or don't want to. I'm like, just engage somebody. Ask them to go paddleboarding with you. Ask them to go to coffee, go for a hike, do when you're in trouble. There's a lot of people who have people who care, but they just don't reach out. And this is, I can do this sometimes. There's some people I'm really good at pursuing. And then there's other times that based on my own pain history, there's other relationships that it is harder for me. I have to intentionally think through, I should call somebody who's gone through this before me. I had to learn that skill. My mom, it felt like I parented her. So it didn't feel like I went to her to help me with a lot of things. And so that's not a natural skill to me to go to somebody for help because I didn't learn that. And I'm still going to be proactive and powerful on my own, but I've learned I need the balance of getting help from people.
Yeah, I want to say, because we're talking about multiple levels of pursuit of people. So one of them, you're talking about pursuing people to get help.
Well, even just advice or letting them in on where I'm at.
Totally. And then there's the pursuit of just connection. I'm just sharing myself and I'm listening to you about you. Then there's pursuing others to understand their world and to love on them, to give to them, right? But there's these multiple levels of pursuit fill different emotional buckets internally inside of us. and they build long-term bonds through the vulnerability that takes place inside of that.
Yeah.
And those bonds, again, create that foundational support of I'm not alone in this world.
Yeah.
I have a strong network. I'm going to be okay no matter what happens. It creates a sense of faith inside of us.
Yeah.
Inside of pursuit of others.
Yep.
Right. And anything else on it?
Well, I was thinking that what pursuit does is it helps you get outside of yourself. So this is one of the
That's good.
tools that helped me. I heard somebody talk about this probably when I was a teenager, and I held on to it. They're like, if you're really struggling with depression, go serve someone, go help someone else, because being connection actually is one of the most healing things on the planet.
Yeah.
And we don't always know how or what to do, but getting outside of ourselves
It's good.
is, and that actually goes into the servant hearted next core value that we're talking about, which is when I am thinking about there's so many times that I was really sick and so depressed from being really sick. And I ended up helping other people work through their issues. And it made me get outside of myself. It made me get outside of being trapped inside my own head, inside my own world. It made me have empathy for others. It reminded me I wasn't alone. It reminded me other people are going through hard things too. It forces you to get kind of out of your own pity.
Yeah.
And your own victim mentality that can get lost in there. And so to me, serving others or pursuing others is a way to pull yourself out of depression.
Yeah. And serving others builds, I don't know how to put it, but as I'm serving someone else, it builds these universal bank accounts. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and when I say bank accounts, I mean like, oh, there are people who will serve me in my life and show up for me as I serve. It also tells me that there's more than enough. Usually people who don't serve are in a very lack mindset.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, I need to just take. Mm-hmm. I'm not here to serve. I'm here to take from everything. But every time I serve, I'm telling life like, no, I can go ahead and give myself away over here because I know there's more than enough that's going to come back to me. I don't have to be consistently self-focused. I'm not an orphan. I'm going to get taken care of. So it's very easy. And that's an overflow. Like my servant heartedness as I love myself and receive love from others. I'm also giving out a whole bunch. And there's this unique like flow that's very consistent inside of it.
Oh yeah. I think that it's really, really powerful. And anybody who's worked their way up, I've been a boss in multiple places, and I've also worked my way up as an employee in multiple places. And servant heartedness opens people's heart to you. They see that you're being proactive. Mm-hmm. They see that you're engaged. They see that you're taking ownership. They see that you care.
Yeah.
Being servant hearted is a sign that you care.
Yeah. It's saying I'm for you. I'm for this environment.
And there's been people that like I naturally wouldn't have been drawn to, but they were consistent and kind. They showed up regularly and just were faithful at doing something, and you just start to like love them. Like it opens your heart towards people when there is that desire to. And I don't think obviously you can become really codependent in how you serve. Right. You can like, and I think the Bible's a great balance. It says, love your neighbor as yourself, which is like, you need to love yourself and you need to love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. Both things balance each other. But for me, there is my brain just stopped. That's what happened inside of me. There is something that opens up people's hearts, and it's just that consistent thing. Like I'm like, as a boss, when you see somebody just doing their job well consistently, or when you see somebody going the extra mile consistently, or when you see somebody, like you're like, oh, they picked up that trash because they just saw that needed to be done. Yes. It wasn't their job. Like so many of my jobs, I got promotions because that's what I did. I saw things that needed to be done and was like, I'm going to do them. I'm going to do them well. And people notice when you continually do things with a heart of servant.
Well, and I want to talk about that for one quick second, because I was raised in an environment. One of the greatest gifts that my parents gave me was a servant-hearted nature.
Yeah.
That's something that they did pretty extravagantly. They were always wanting to serve people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they, I was being taught from a very young age, serve well.
Yeah.
And, obviously we can put our identity inside of something, and we're not having a conversation about like, I'm performing to get love from people and stuff like that. But when we get into a heart posture of like, no, I really want to take care of people and my environment well. And I want to be very, very open to help in any way that I can. It does, like, people feel supported. They feel cared for. They feel championed as you're serving them. And there was no end to how I would serve. I didn't care if I was never above cleaning a toilet. I was never above like doing the worst, whatever everyone else didn't want to do. I was like, I'll do it. I'll do it. Like, I'm not trying to earn my way around here. This is who I am. I'm going to live that way. And to me, inside of businesses, like, that's someone who's servant-hearted is going to be really effective. They're going to be someone that you can really trust oftentimes. Like, I'm not talking about people who are manipulating through trying to serve to manipulate their way through the system. But I'm talking about genuine servant-hearted people. You're like, no, I can trust them. They're actually for me and they're for this environment.
Yes. It's the idea of I am doing this because I want to bring goodness.
Yes.
I'm doing this because I want to bring goodness. And, like your dad the other day, he found, I don't even know how this happened, but he was like taking scrap metal to somebody and their shop was a mess. And so your dad took a week.
There was an older guy who had this shop, metal shop, and he was bringing scraps out there and stuff. And his shop was a total disaster.
But I also think he had some physical problems.
And he had some physical problems and he was older. And my dad was like, oh, would you like your shop to be cleaned up? He was like, but I can't because he's like, I got you.
Yeah. And he just spent a week of his time going to the shop and cleaning it up.
It was a pure act of love. He had no agenda whatsoever. Yeah. He just saw this guy and his heart was moved and he had the space to do it. So he jumped in to participate.
Yeah. I always feel like we're all connected to each other when we get into eternity and see how the planet worked. I think we'll see that we were all more connected to each other as humans than we had any idea of. And what we do for each other actually ends up rippling throughout the universe, and that when we love one another, it is in some way inviting love back towards us. And I think that the servant, again, you need to have boundaries. Like I used to serve and totally abandoned myself and
or you can abandon your entire family because you're serving everyone else, but not actually being there for your family.
So there needs to be balance around this idea, but it's even just like you notice in the environment the people that you can count on because they're going to see what needs to be done and they're going to help make things happen. Yeah.
There's so many times where people will come to me in a moment of pain and I like, even it's as simple as servant-heartedness is like, oh, I'm going to
give you my time.
I'm going to give you my time. I'm going to get present real quick and be here for this moment as best as I know how with you. And I can serve you in that way right now.
Yeah, that's a great idea for servant-hearted. You do that a lot. You're like, I had a plan for the day, but this person really needed to process. And so I dropped what I was going to get done so that I could meet
my agenda, set it to the side. And
that's a great way to serve.
Yeah. You're talking about servant-heartedness, and hardworking was another part of it that I think is a great flow easily into that conversation. Because working hard and going the extra mile is something that has radically changed the favor on my life.
100%.
I will hear,
and this is biblical because it's take whatever you've been given. It doesn't matter if you've been given 1, 5, 10, whatever you've been given, and do something with it.
Yep. And a lot of times I will hear people, I've had people in my office be like, I don't understand why I don't get promotions or I don't get these 100%. Opportunities. I'm like, you won't work hard. You will not go the extra mile on anything inside of your life. You are living in defeatism. You're living in entitlement behavior patterns. You don't think that you should have to work an extra hour of time.
Totally.
In my life, I remember there were so many times where even I would work overtime. And I would work overtime without even charging a boss at times. Yep. I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. I'm just saying I didn't care. I was like, but you need some help here. I'm just going to show up for you. And they were like, what? Why are you doing this? You don't have to do this. I'm like, I know I don't have to. Mm-hmm. I'm going above and beyond. And I know you couldn't afford to even pay the overtime on this. I'm just going to do it for you because I see a need here.
Yep.
And I did that, in churches when I would go to churches and be part of youth groups or young adult groups. It would be like, the service is ending and I would work extra hard to help put everything away. I wasn't even on a cleanup team. I was like, how can I jump in here? And I'm going to work really hard and go the extra mile. I don't have to,
right?
But I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And every time I did these things, there was a notoriety, and I wasn't trying to ass kiss. It wasn't manipulative. It was a part of my lifestyle of I'm going to work really hard. Mm-hmm. And so, and again, in your life, anything, whether it's a hobby that you want to work hard at and become feel a sense of success, I spent 40 hours of extra overtime working on that hobby. I think of my buddy Jason.
Yeah.
He started fly fishing.
Yeah.
And he was just, enjoying fly fishing and then started putting in hours and hours of time of studying how to make fly rods and make flies. Mm-hmm. And now he's like an expert fly rod maker and fly maker. And all of that stuff. And it's like, people will be like, oh my God, how did you get so incredible? And it's like, he went the extra mile.
A lot of hours in.
Hard work and effort into it and consistency and studying and asking questions.
Yeah. Well, I love outliers because they broke something. This is such a simple concept. They're like, if you want to be a master at something, spend 10,000 hours doing it. Mm-hmm. And I remember feeling so overwhelmed by that when I heard
10,000 hours.
I'll never get to be a master at anything. But you actually like the concept is if you spend enough time working on something, you will grow in it. Mm-hmm. That's the concept.
Yeah.
And so the more I've seen that in my life, I'm like, you can become really good at it. Like, oh, I'm really bad at makeup. I'm going to spend hours learning how to do it. And I'm going to practice. Oh, I'm really bad at time management. I'm going to spend some hours figuring out what the best way to do it is.
This is funny. I heard a guy complaining the other day about what he makes as a wage. Uh-huh. And then I started exploring with him what's your work pattern look like and stuff like that. And I'm like, your work is crap. Of course you don't get paid well for it. You don't work hard. You don't try to get better at your craft and what you're doing. And you're wondering why people don't want to pay you because you're not excellent. Hard work and going the extra mile develops excellence inside of us.
Yes.
And that excellence is favored in any arena, whether
anywhere. Anytime you are excellent, people want to promote you. They want to give you more money.
Hobbies,
they want to give you more authority. They want to give you more favor.
Leadership places. Yep.
Excellence always brings a favor.
Yep. And so that to me, you want to feel like your life is vibrant and moving forward, work your ass off.
Yeah.
Go the extra mile when you don't have to do something. This is one other thing I want to add to that.
People will be like, no one will see it. I'm like, I guarantee you, first of all, if you work your ass off and your work environment doesn't value that, you will still learn skills by working your ass off that then in the next work environment you go to, you'll find a place that values it.
This isn't a dig on my grandfather, right? But my grandfather would build stuff, and so would my dad. And their work product was entirely different. Like my grandpa would execute the project. Yeah. My dad would create an excellent project.
Yes.
Right. And so my dad always had this hardworking mentality of like, yeah, I've already sanded it with this level of sandpaper, but if I go with this next level and spend another couple hours on it, I've already spent 40 hours on this project. Totally. If I spend another 2 hours, I will create something that's really beautiful. And that's something that I watched my dad always be like, I will put in the extra time and the effort.
Yeah.
And that's why he won awards for so many of his woodworking things and stuff like that, is because of that hard work and the excellence that came out of it.
Well, and my dad was the same. My dad had a lot of hobbies, which I think is awesome. What he would do is he'd just pick something, and then his thought was the first 100 are going to be shit.
Yeah.
So like every time, I'm not even going to judge myself. I'm not going to be like, am I good or bad?
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep doing the thing over and over and over again. And so I love that he really taught, like, it's just repetition. Do hard work over and over again. You will grow skills.
Yeah.
And he did. He always got so much better at whatever he did.
Yeah.
It's that patience with yourself, and it's having realistic expectations. A lot of what we're talking about is having long-term vision. So instead of like, I should just be successful now, or I should just have favor now, or I should just have everybody like me now. It's how do I make little decisions where the consistency will compound?
Yeah.
Where over and over again, when I'm servant-hearted, that will build favor. Over and over again, when I work hard, that will teach me excellence. Over and over again. It's that process of seeing, I don't need to figure out how to instantly get a promotion by next week.
Mm-hmm.
I need to figure out how to become a great human that will live at a higher level for the rest of my life.
That's so great. I like that. And speaking of being a great human, I want to jump into relational cleanup.
Yeah.
Because relational cleanup is one of the most profound ways to get a sense of a lifestyle of success. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes we have messes that we've made all over the place, or we've been in part of. Like, might not even have been us that made them. We just know that there's a relational mess that exists.
Yep.
And those relational messes can cause us to feel the weight, unresolved emotional messes that we haven't resolved. They can leave us feeling this heaviness of like, there's this thing
shame.
looming, shame. There's this relationship that's not wrapped up. It can cause us to actually hide ourselves instead of like move our lives forward, because it's like, oh, there's all these faces in the background of my head that are unresolved. Right. And so relational cleanup to me is part of that proactive element, part of that ownership element. It's about living a lifestyle where all my relationships, I am deliberately like investing in head on. Mm-hmm. Where there are messes and difficulties that exist, I'm going to go have the conversations that are needed inside of them. And I'm going to figure out how to participate in restoration processes. Yep. And I think that goes, it's not just relationships. Think about this. Parents with kids with parents. Right now, you might be a kid of a parent, and you're going, "Oh, you know what? There's a mess with my parents, and I've been avoiding dealing with that. And maybe I need to become proactive and start working on the relational mess that I participated in co-creating on my end."
Well, and all of our vice versa. Core value, we'll read through the list at the end, but all of them really do intertwine, which is like when I have ownership over my life and I'm being proactive, then it is natural for me to say like, hey, I'm aware of my impact. I'm sorry that I did this. I'm sorry for how I showed up like this. I'm sorry, and it is hard. Ownership of and taking ownership of your
relational cleanups.
Yep. It feels like getting punched in the stomach sometimes.
Yeah.
Because shame really wants us to blame everyone else and not take any ownership. Yeah. And so it takes eating humble pie so much to be able to be like, this is a role I played. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I played a role in this, or even if it's my role was avoidance or not addressing these things or not showing up and saying something earlier about this situation. Yeah. Which also leads to another point, because I know we don't have a lot of time, but being healthily confrontational. Yeah, it's that proactivity. And this is the balance of being servant-hearted and going the extra mile. If you're not having a voice for yourself also, then you do just become a doormat and being run over. But being able to say like, hey, I want more connection, or hey, I need, I want to show up really well. And so I need to share about some feelings that are going on. Yeah. Like short accounts, being able to bring up things with other people when they're not huge deals. Yes. It saves so much on the relationship. So much relational success. To me, that's healthy confrontation. Healthy confrontation is I'm having these conversations as early as I'm aware of what's going on inside of me to keep from creating these accounts, right? To keep from building mountains inside of our hearts, so that they're easily conquerable together, easily resolved together. And that's a way to love people. That's a way to create a sense of safety inside of relationships, whether that's in the workplace,
that's in family relationships or any dynamics. This type lifestyle, even if it's not natural and it feels scary, because I know a lot of people could go, well, I'm an Enneagram, and this is why I don't do this. But that's something that can be changed and growing inside of.
Yeah.
And you can create an environment where people feel really connected, not because everything's perfect, but because we're living an honest life by being deliberate about the conversations we have.
Well, and this is, I think, why this is a core value, because it feels impossible to me to be a good human. Like, it just feels overwhelming to me to always respond well. Like, I have all these body responses. I still have PTSD reactions, which means I'm reacting without my conscious mind telling me how to respond. And so there's a lot of ways that I feel powerless to be my best version of me. Like, I'm messy. And so the thing I do have, so we can like just give up into that and be like, what's the point in trying? I'm just a mess, and sink into shame. Or you can be like, okay, what do I have power over?
Yeah.
I do have power over taking ownership. If I react poorly, I can respond by taking ownership for that reaction. I can say, I'm sorry. I can honestly look at myself and work through it with you. And that's kind of like, we don't claim, like, we're on the journey of learning how to be regulated human beings.
Yep.
And we're on the journey of learning how to let go of our protectors. It's hard.
Yes.
And we're messy.
Yes.
I have ownership, though, by the fact that I will own my messiness with people.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to, and they can bring it up with me, and I will apologize.
Yeah.
That's the power I have. I don't have the power to be perfect, but I do have the power to take ownership for my imperfections.
No one does, right?
And I think if people could get to that acceptance of self, of like, no, instead of trying to be perfect my whole life, I'm going to keep going on the growth journey, but I'm also just going to get comfortable owning that I'm not perfect.
Yeah.
I'm just going to accept that I'm not perfect.
And speaking of that, this is our very last one today I want to talk about, which is emotional management.
Well, I was thinking maybe we should do that in the next one.
Nope, we're going to do it right here.
Okay.
This is where it's going to go. We're going to keep it short, though.
Okay.
Emotional management. So our emotions are all over the place, and we live in a society that says I have a right to have whatever emotion I want and then to act in whatever way that I want. And it's okay to have emotions, but it's the way that we allow those emotions to be communicated to the world that we need to take a deep ownership for. I see people who, this is another workplace thing. They don't manage their emotions. They're entitled to express their emotions in their minds, entitled to express their emotions however they want. And so part of them having a voice is having these big emotions that are reactive into situations and spewed out all over people. And somehow they feel that it's justifiable because they have pain or they have problems. And that's a surefire way to not be successful, not in workplaces, not in personal relationships. Like, that's a surefire way to get ejected out of relationships and opportunities when we're not managing our emotions. It doesn't mean that we can't be messy. It doesn't mean that we can't make mistakes. That's part of the relational cleanup, right? Yeah. Like, can we have relational cleanup? And am I working on managing my emotions?
Yeah.
And that's managing how I respond to people, even managing how much hopelessness I have. Like, oh, I feel hopeless. I can let this escalate to a level 10,000 hopelessness, or I can manage my heart and be like, yeah, there's some hopelessness there, but I'm not going to let it get out of control.
Yeah.
I'm going to actually combat that internally. Or there is some fear, and I'm not going to let it go to a level 10,000 and become fragile over my life. I'm going to bring myself back together and start actually addressing why this fear is here and what to do about it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
So I'm going to reframe I'm just going to go through the list so that people, because we just meandered through that, one led to another. But here are the keys that we're saying for success. And these
from an action standpoint.
From an action standpoint, we're going to go, another round will be from a heart posture.
Yeah.
But from an action standpoint, the action items you can do to increase favor in your life. I was just thinking about this one employee that we had that was really not good at their job, but they were really servant-hearted. They were really proactive. They went the extra mile.
Yeah.
And so you saw them grow, and they grew in excellence, and they practiced and they worked, and they became a great employee.
Very proud of them.
Yeah. I was very proud of them too. And we honestly could have fired them for
many times.
Yes. But it was because of these action things they did that enabled us to give grace, and then actually got to the place where we felt really like thankful for how they impacted our world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So ownership, pursuit of others, relational cleanup, emotional management, being confrontational, being proactive, being servant-hearted, and being hardworking, going the extra mile.
Yeah.
Those are some things.
Those are major keys.
Just take a couple seconds and do something. Think about ways that you're proud of yourself. Again, this is one of the best things to do. Don't let shame eat you.
Mm-hmm.
Think about something you're proud of yourself for in these things that you're like, I do this. And then think about a few ways that you could grow.
Yeah, that's good. Don't let shame go all Pac-Man on your ass.
Yeah. And just yeah. Also, signups for Life Consulting Masterclass are happening, and we are loving it. It's so much fun. The school is transforming. It will change your life. It will change your understanding of humanity and yourself. It'll change your understanding of your own story. It will help empower you. If you get lost or stuck, or if you just want to grow, you're like, no, I want to learn how to show up more. Come show up with us.
I have had students say that this is the best decision they've made with their adult life to participate in this because of the transformation that they've experienced. And I've been pretty flattered by that statement, but it's true. Like there's something very powerful happening as we're getting people to apply principles like these to their lives and get to the root of things that keep them from moving their lives forward. We're watching such a profound change inside of people's response to life. I'm loving watching it. And we're gonna share a little clip from LCMC with you, and so you can hear from one of our students what their experience has been so far. And remember to rate, review, subscribe, and share.
I would say something I'm really proud of myself for is engaging conflict, especially with family. I've had some opportunities to do that with both my parents, and yeah, it's gone significantly better than I could have ever imagined. And
wow.
I feel more confident, and I'd say I even look forward to it, and I'm like, okay, let's do this right away. Like, and I feel like I have tools now to do it, and I've noticed I feel more confident in work and just like with friends, bringing up stuff that like before doing this, I would have, it would have been all internal. So I'm super proud of myself for doing that. And I've seen it benefit in almost every area. So that's been really cool.
It's like happening 3 or 4 times a day that I just, without trying, pick up safety cues. I'm not trying. I'm just living my life. In home group, we had to do like envision one of the positive or negative emotions, and I envisioned safety. And then what I came up with was like, safety is a stranger to me. So I realized like I can't relate to safety at all. I have none of it. And that was a few months ago. And in the last few weeks, I'm just blown away. Like I'm not trying. I'm just living my life. And like 3 or 4 times a day, I keep like being washed with like safety. So I saw a psychologist yesterday. She just had me close my eyes and I dropped in my body, which is hard for me. She was like astounded. My psychologist is Daniel Force because she's like, this is phenomenal. I could just drop in. And I said to her, like, I can't believe I dropped in that quickly. And she said to me, like, what do you see? And I saw a net under me. And I said to her, I literally see, I'm visualizing a safety net. And so I have built a safety net. And it's not like cognitive, it's somatic, like it's real. Yeah, this has been like phenomenal for me, this whole safety thing.
Anyways.
Okay, we like you all.
Goodbye.